In this video, we're going to show you how to install the alternator on your Kia Sorento located on the passenger side of your engine. With the hood open, go ahead and locate your battery right here on the driver's side front portion of the vehicle. We're going to use a 10mm socket, our extension and ratchet, to go ahead and loosen the 10mm nut here. Go ahead and give this a twist. Go ahead and pull it up and off and set it aside. Using a 21mm socket, go ahead and loosen and remove your lug nuts. Go ahead and grab that wheel, remove it, and set it aside. Now with the wheel removed, you're going to go ahead and access the bolts securing our splash shield to the body itself. There's going to be 4 bolts. They're 10mm. There's one up behind the wheel well liner here, one here. There's one up top here. Ours is missing right here. Then there's going to be one here, and then one right back here. We're going to use our 10mm with our extension. Loosen and remove. Next, you want to get and remove the one that will be right here. I'm going to come back to this one here. Now the back one over here, we can't get our power tool onto it, so we're going to switch over to a hand ratchet and loosen and remove that. And then just work out the splash shield. Now chances are you're replacing this because it's already broken or shattered or just missing. In our case, I'm going to go ahead and remove that. Set that aside. Now that we have the splash shield removed here, we can go ahead and access our belt that runs around all of our pulleys. Now before you go any further, go ahead and grab a piece of paper or a notepad. You want to go ahead and map out all of your components, like your water pump and your crankshaft, your idler, tensioner, alternator, all that stuff there, and then draw out your belt routing. I will tell you what, on this particular model vehicle, the belt has a crazy routing, and you are going to get confused or lost when you go to put that belt back on. So go ahead and document it properly. Now right here, you have the tensioner. It's a 17mm bolt on the center. I'm simply going to use my wrench. Put it on there, and we're going to pull it down. It's going to be counterclockwise. See that belt, all that slack? That's what you want. You want to go ahead and pull this over and then pull that belt off. And go ahead and release that. Pull that wrench off, and then go ahead and remove your belt from all of your accessories. We might have to pull this belt off from up top because there's that last pulley up there that I just can't get that belt off of. So at this point, I'm simply going to tuck this in the back until we can get back up top and pull this off the rest of the way. Right here is an idler pulley. We want to go ahead and loosen and remove this. That there is a 14mm. Go ahead and remove that. It's going to have that little shim there. Bolt. Set that aside. So now that we have the belt disconnected from everything down below, come on up top, and we're going to go ahead and pull this out. We want to go ahead and evacuate a bunch of the power steering fluids in the reservoir. So we went ahead and we just got a little container here that's going to work for us. I set that aside. I want to make sure that's not going to spill anywhere. And it could be right there for now. Open up the cap, and you can use something like a turkey baster, if it'll fit in there. We're going to use the suction tool to go ahead and pull out as much of this fluid as possible and then put it into that container. Now we pull out as much fluid as possible out of that using the suction tool. I'm going to go ahead and take this and put that aside. Pull that out and set this aside. And once we evacuate as much fluid out of our reservoir as possible, we're going to go ahead and install our cap. Now we have two hoses here, or two power steering lines. We're going to go ahead, when we remove our power steering pump and pull up it out of the way, we're going to go ahead and take our reservoir too and pull this up as well and pull that over. So we're going to go ahead and disconnect these smaller hose here using our pliers. Go ahead and pinch that hose and slide that back. Now I'm going to go ahead and just gently pinch this hose here to twist it free and pull that off. Be careful not to squeeze it too hard. You don't want to snap that port on the reservoir. Now I'm going to go ahead and take a towel here. These are our mats here that catch fluids. I'm going to tuck this down inside because there will leak some fluid here. We want to just catch that. Now if you have something you can go ahead and plug this off with or cap it, go ahead and do so. Now on top of your power steering pump, there's going to be an electrical connector right here, a single wire, and there's just a little pinch tab here. I want to go ahead and remove this, pinch that, and pull that off. Now the next thing is, behind your pulley are going to be 3 bolts we need to loosen or remove. Well, how do you access that? Well, on the front of a pulley is going to be holes. You're going to go ahead and locate the first hole at 12 o'clock. You're going to take your socket to 12 millimeter. Now I'm using a 1/4-inch drive unit, 12 millimeter deep socket on my ratchet. Go right through to that bolt. Go ahead and spin this out. All right. This is the first bolt there. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put my finger inside that port and I'm going to slowly rotate it around and locate that next one. The next one is probably, if you were looking at the pulley face on, roughly about 9 o'clock. Do the same thing. Usually once you get those out, just a few threads, you can go ahead and remove that ratchet and pop your socket on there and just reach down there and spin that out. All right, go ahead and remove that bolt there. And then we're going to do the same thing. Rotate this around, and it's just about 6 o'clock, right at the bottom. Okay, with that lower bolt out, and there's a long bolt. So now that our power steering pump is loose, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and grab our reservoir here. There's a post on the bottom that goes to a rubber grommet, and then there's a grommet on the back here. So go ahead and grab that reservoir with 2 hands, just gently wiggle it straight up. Now that we have a reservoir separated here from the bracket, you follow the hose down, it does come to the power steering pump. There's a clamp right here. I'm going to use my needle nose pliers, pinch that clamp and work that back. You can work it forward if you want, it doesn't matter, we just need to get that moved. Now you are going to lose some power steering fluid here. If you want to put a rag or a towel or a catch can or something underneath, I'm going to use my hose pliers. I want to just break that free and then move further back and twist this hose off. Remove that and set it aside and wiggle that pump unit free. Go ahead and set that pump aside. Now right here on the top of our alternator is a 14mm bolt, and if you go straight to the opposite side, roughly about 6 o'clock, there's going to be another bolt. I'm going to go ahead and break this one free. And this bolt here, you bring back, it does hit the inside of the frame. Just wanted you to see that. That's something we're going to be taking care of in just a minute. Now let's go down to the opposite side and get to that bolt. Now from inside the wheel well area here, we're going to use our deep 14mm socket and pop it on our ratchet. The lower bolt we can go ahead and remove. Now right where this bolt went through is going to be a pivot point here. I'm going to go ahead and spray some rust penetrant inside to try and break up some of that corrosion and make this a little bit easier to remove. I'm going to go ahead and use my brass punch here. Just try and break that free a little bit. Now the bolt is still on the top, but this should allow us to at least pivot at the bottom. All right, we have that loose enough. We're going to spray that a little bit more. Now on our motor mount here, there's a 17mm nut. We need to go ahead, loosen, and remove this. We did spray it down with some rust penetrant and let it soak in a little bit. Remove that nut and set it aside. Now underneath here we have our jack set up with a block of wood, and we're putting it around the edge of the pan itself. That's going to be the strongest point of contact here. And what we need to do is slowly jack this up. And what we're doing is we're lifting up that motor off of that motor mount just enough where we can get that alternator bolt out. Here we go, get that bolt out. I'm going to go ahead and lower this motor back down. Let's go ahead and work on pulling that alternator out. Now on our alternator here, there's a wiring harness that runs down, and there's a little retainer right here that holds it to the unit. So I'm just going to use my trim tool and pop that little retainer button out. On the back of the alternator is going to be a power wire that's bolted to the back. There's going to be a nut securing that. Then there's an electrical harness that's clipped in there as well. We do need to attend to that, but first we want to go ahead and loosen our alternator. So I'm just taking a flathead screwdriver. You can use a small pry bar if you want, and go between the alternator and the bracket. I need to go ahead and move this, try and work this out. Now if this doesn't want to move, we're going to go ahead and soak it down with some rust penetrant or some sort of spray lube in between the pivot here and the back. Let's go ahead and do that now. Let that soak for a little bit. Sometimes using that brass punch will help loosen this up a little bit. Might be able to use a little bit larger of a pry bar Let's go ahead and work this. Before we pop out our alternator here, we have this unit right here. There's two 10mm bolts right here holding this unit in place. I'm going to go ahead and pop those off there. Let's go ahead and zip those out. Go ahead and pop this off. This arm right here just pops onto a ball, so we can pull this up and out of the way. And we should be able to go ahead and pop that alternator free. Let's now go ahead and remove the electrical on the back side. Now across the front portion here, we're gonna have a series of these plastic push pins. There's 4 of them to be exact. On our particular model, it has a little Phillips head center button on it that you unscrew. Then you can use your trim tool to help you get that out the rest of the way, or at least a bit of the way. And then you go underneath the base and pop it out. Go ahead and do that for the other 3. Once you have these 4 out, there's going to be 6 12mm bolts. There's one here, 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 and then right here, and one in the back. Let's now go ahead, loosen and remove those. Now on our particular model vehicle, or this vehicle, we're missing one right here. Hold that cover while you remove that last bolt. Slide out from underneath the bumper cover itself. Pull it out and set it aside. Now back up from underneath here. On the back side of the alternator, you're gonna have a rubber boot. You're gonna pull that off and that's gonna expose one of the nuts holding the power wire to this here. Now this nut here, you go ahead and remove using our 12mm. Now doing a job like this here, you always want to make sure that the battery has been disconnected, because if you remove this and touches another piece of metal, well, you're going to end up with all kinds of sparks and exciting things like that, and you don't want that to happen. Remove that nut and go ahead and pull that wire right off of the back of that. And if you want, go ahead and put that nut right back on the alternator. Spin that right on. There you go. Now right up above it, you have the electrical connector. There's a little spring clip on here, a little button or tab. You want to pinch that and wiggle that connector off like so. Now at this point, we should be able to wiggle that alternator a little bit. You might go ahead and use that pry bar from different positions and just kind of work that out a little bit. I'm going to come around to the passenger side wheel well and just kind of wiggle this up a little bit. The reason why I'm doing this here is that the aluminum gets a little corroded and it causes the two metals to kind of get sticky or crusted together, and it can cause these to kind of give you a hard time. All right, let's go ahead and move up top and see if we can wiggle that alternator up and out. Now we're going to reach down here, we're going to grab that alternator with two hands and wiggle it up and out. Now this bracket here for our reservoir is held in place by two 10mm bolts. I'm going to go ahead and zip out the bolts holding it. Move that and set it aside. Go ahead and grab that alternator and wiggle that up and out. I'm going to go ahead and take a drip mat here. I'm going to slide this down underneath. Now there's one thing about installing a part. Half of it is the cleaning up and the preparation in order to install a new part. And you want to make sure that you take care of things while you're here to prevent issues down the road. What I'm doing right now is I'm just running some sandpaper through the groove for the lower bolt. This is where the lower bolt for the alternator goes. And it does have some aluminum corrosion on here. I'm just kind of scuffing it to clean up some of the old garbage that's on there. Proper prep will make installation that much easier. So you don't have bolts binding and stuff like that. You want it to go together nice and easy. Now the reason why I put that there is now we can go ahead with some spray solvent and give that a quick spray. Then the same thing up top here. Our upper bolt, just going to clean the surface here where the alternator rubs up against here. These are pretty clean up top anyways. And you have your power steering bracket here. There's nothing on there that we have to worry about. So at this point, let's go ahead and pull this mat out. Now we have our new alternator here. Now let's go ahead and prep this for installation. Now when this goes into the vehicle, this is going to be the lower portion and this is the upper. And remember that when we had removed our harness here, our power wire, and then the connector was up top. So you want to go ahead and start by orientating that first. Second thing, make sure that your bolts are clean. Run them through the wire wheel machine, clean those up, make sure there's no corrosion or anything that's going to cause resistance when installing. Make sure the threads are clean and you don't have any garbage on there. Next, I'm going to go ahead and apply some anti-seize compound to this here, as well as a little bit to the threads. We're going to go ahead and install this now and get this started a few threads. The reason why we're doing this here is that on the bottom portion of our alternator, this bolt actually fits into that trough that we just sanded out and we cleaned up. So when we drop this alternator down inside, literally the bolt just drops down into that tray or that trough. Then we spin the top portion of the alternator up and in and put that bolt through. So let's go ahead and do that next. All right, let's go ahead and lower our alternator down in a position. There we go. We have the lower bolt set in that trough, and you see we can swing that here. We're going to grab the upper bolt, put some anti-seize compound on that, and slide that into place. I'm going to slide this up. And go ahead and get that started. thread that in. When I reach down, I'm going to thread in that lower one. Now the alternator itself is in a fixed position, so we can just go ahead and tighten these down. I'm going to torque these down to 36 foot-pounds. Now that we have the upper bolt torqued, we're going to go ahead and lower down our motor. We'll be able to watch the stud come through our mount itself. And once that's nestled down in a position, we can now go ahead and tighten and torque the lower alternator bolt. Let's go ahead and snug down this lower bolt. All right, let's go ahead and torque this one down. All right, with the alternator torqued in place, let's go ahead and install our idler pulley. Go ahead and take your idler pulley, line that up, get that bolt started. If that bolt goes in nice and easy, go ahead and just continue to spin that in by hand. Go ahead and tighten this down. All right, once that bottoms out, just give it a little bit more. I'll grab our torque wrench. I'm going to torque that down to about 18 foot-pounds. Give that a quick little spin. It's spinning nice and free. That's perfect. Now we want to go ahead and install our two bolts, our 10mm bolts, on our actuator right here. So it goes through the actuator and the bracket. So I'm going to use my socket and my upper bolt. I'm going to feed that through, line that up. Now the actuator rod right here, you want to pop onto the metal stud right here. So let me just get my hand there, line that up and just push it on. There it is, snapped in there. Let's go ahead and get that lower bolt lined up and installed. Use my socket here, it's a little bit longer to get in there, get that lined up. I'm going to thread that in by hand as far as I can. It's pretty easy doing so. I'm just going to use my ratchet, and I just want to gently snug these. So it's bottomed out, just a hair bit more. Same thing down here. Bottomed out, snug. Now down on the lower portion of our alternator here, go ahead and take your harness right here with that little retainer. I'm going to line that up on the tab on the alternator and push that in. Now when we go to install our power steering pump, you want to take note that there are obviously 3 holes here, but only the lower one is positioned about 6 o'clock is the long bolt. The one at 12 o'clock and the one at 9 o'clock is going to be the short bolts. And then finagle this down in a position. And once you get that wiggled into place, you can see that your portions of the power steering pump are lining up. Now I'm going to just put the 12 o'clock bolt in through the pump and into the bracket. And now I'm just going to wiggle the pump around and maneuver that until that bolt lines up and start to get that threaded in. You want to be careful and make sure that you do get it started properly, because you're going into aluminum and you don't want to cross thread this. Now that we have the upper bolt in, go ahead and get the side bolt in here. And then once you get that started, go ahead and grab that lower bolt and we'll get that lined up. Okay, we have all 3 bolts started. I'll go ahead and put our ratchet on there. Go ahead and snug these down. I'm going to get and torque these down to 21 foot-pounds. Install the electrical connector on the top of the power steering pump. Line that up, push it down. You can feel it click into place. Now next thing we want to do is install our reservoir pump bracket here, our reservoir for the power steering pump. Grab your 10mm bolts and we're going to simply line that up. Get those bolts started. I'm going to go ahead and snug those down. And these here, I'm just going to go ahead and snug them down once I've bottomed out a little bit more. It doesn't require much more than that. I want to go ahead and install our reservoir. Now we did empty this out. We cleaned the whole outside of it. Go ahead and line up our pins here with the grommet. And then we have the grommet here that goes into the back of our bracket. What I'm going to do is take my hose and line that up and work that onto the pump. Then, line this up, push it down into place, grab our other hose here, and go ahead and slide that in. Go ahead and move your clamps up into position. Let's go ahead and add power steering fluid to this unit here. On the side of the unit, there's going to be a cold and a hot. I'm just going to go ahead and fill it right up to the cold section here. I'm going to go ahead and open this up. Go ahead and grab a bottle of the appropriate power steering fluid recommended for your vehicle and fill that up to the proper level. Go ahead and use a clean funnel. Once you're up to that level, go ahead and install the cap. Give that a quick wipe down. Install the mount nut. Want to snug that down. Then we're going to torque that down to 65 foot-pounds. Now from underneath, we want to go ahead and install our connector up here on the top portion of our alternator. These connections are crucial, so you want to make sure that everything is clean, everything lines up just right, and it's definitely secured properly. I want to make sure that that is definitely clicked on. There it is. You want to hear that click in. You don't want to hit a bump and have that thing pop off and then you're stuck on the side of the road. Make sure you feel and hear that click into place. Then we have the nut on there. Going to spin off the nut. Now, when you're installing the power wire on the alternator, there's a tab on the top of the harness right here. You want to make sure that when you install this here, that tab lines up with a notch on the alternator. That way when you tighten the nut down, that actually goes in and locks in and it won't allow it to spin when you're installing the nut. If it's not in there, you're gonna tighten this down, it's gonna feel tight, but it's gonna go on crooked and it's gonna cause an issue down the road where it's gonna have intermittent contact. That's gonna leave you, once again, stuck on the side of the road. Install that nut. Spin that on, give that wire a good jiggle, make sure that that tab is locked in. All right, let's go ahead and snug that down. Now the nut on the new alternator, this is a 13 millimeter, not a 12 like the factory one is. I just get my 1/4 inch ratchet on there. You do want to make sure that it's snug. Now I'm just using a 1/4 inch ratchet. Once that bottoms out, go ahead and give that a little crank on that. Make sure that's good and tight on there. Then don't forget to grab that rubber boot, pull that up and cover that. That is protecting that because that is a live wire and that's hot. So you don't want to have anything else come around and touch that. Make sure that's covered up. Now what we're going to do is we're going to feed our belt down inside. We're going to do a majority of the belt routing from the wheel well area. But the big thing we want to do is get it up around a power steering pulley here. Because that's going to be the pulley that we can't reach from underneath. It's going to be a little bit challenging to do so. If you want, you can go ahead and start to route around a few things if you have the availability or the option to do so here. All right, let's go ahead and go into that wheel well and install the rest of the belt. So now what you want to do is go ahead and run your belt around all of your pulleys as you had drawn out your schematic earlier. Run everything around where it needs to. Now what I have here is the last little loop of belt, and that needs to go around my tensioner here. So I'm going to go ahead and take my wrench, put it inside the belt. Grab that tensioner. Now the reason why we slip it over the tensioner last is that the tensioner is a smooth sidewall, so it makes it easier for us to slide that belt over than it is something with ribs on it. And make sure that belt is on that pulley Next thing you want to do is go ahead and run around all of the pulleys here. Anything with a groove on it. You need to make sure that that belt is inside on top of those grooves. Make sure that the belt is not riding on the outside or the inside of any of these pulleys. AC compressor, power steering, crankshaft. Or on the idlers, make sure that the belt is inward. Ours looks really good. Our alternator looks fantastic. Last one you want to check is up top. And our belt is set properly on top of that power steering. So our belt is installed. Go ahead and take your cover, slide this up into place. Go ahead and start to get your bolts lined up. Once we have your hardware installed, let's go ahead and snug everything down. And once he's bottom out, you're pretty much good to go. You want to snug those down. Once that's installed, you're all set with that. Go ahead and grab that wheel, line it up onto those wheel studs. Let's go ahead and get our lug nuts started. Now once we get all of these started, we're going to come back and snug them all down. Let's go ahead and torque down our lug nuts to 75 foot-pounds. You want to do this in a crisscross pattern. Go ahead and grab your splash shield, and we're going to fit the tabs up underneath our bumper cover. Do that across the whole front. Once we have this lined up, I'm going to go ahead and take one of the bolts and get it installed in the front center. I'm just going to run it in a few threads. Once we have that in, I'm going to go ahead and install the other bolts around the perimeter. If you have any missing hardware, be sure to go ahead and source some replacements so you can make sure that the splash shield is secured properly. Now these just need to be snugged down. Now, if your vehicle has a rear splash shield on it and it attaches to this here, be sure to go ahead and attach it accordingly. This is all our vehicle had when it came in, so we don't have anything else to attach it to here. And go ahead and install your push buttons here. Now these can get brittle, they get deformed. If they do, it's a good time to go ahead and replace them. So basically you're pushing in the base and then take the center, you can push it in. Install your ground terminal. You want to make sure that that's down as far as it'll go on that post. Go ahead and secure this. And make sure that's good and tight. Give that terminal a wiggle, make sure it's good and secured. And you're all set.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.